Here we are with Jay Treat and Josh Edwards of Cahoots. Jay Treat is actually the designer of the game, and Josh is the designer of the app, or the developer.
I developed the app. Jay did the graphic design, I did the coding.
Okay, very good. So they're going to talk to us about the game. We'll start with Jay talking about the origins of the game, and then how we decided to make it an app and where that came from.
This game has seen many origins or iterations.
Iterations, good.
Yeah, so it started off probably 10 years ago with the idea of what if each player was a suit, and so I created Lords of the Realm, and it was a fantasy themed game where you had orcs and dwarves and elves and I think dragons or something like that.
Seems right.
So I'd played that for a bit, and there were a bunch of cards with special powers on them and stuff like that. At all times, it was a trick-taking game, and it always had the core mechanic of how this game is played. And that kind of went by the wayside for a long time, and then AEG mentioned this Tempest world that they were doing, and the wheels started turning, and I said, hey, I could actually really use that. And so I went and I grabbed all of their art, and I made Intrigue. Each of the cards was a different character from their world, and it was all about scheming and plotting. And that was where I separated out the power cards into a scheme deck and the basic cards into the basic deck. And that kind of iterated into the Art of War, and eventually Josh approached me and said, hey, can we develop this game for iOS? And that was our opportunity to say, let's look at how we can make this game for a more mainstream audience rather than kind of the hardcore gamer that I had been trying to appeal to with the scheme decks with all the wacky powers. And honestly, stripping away all that extra stuff really let the center of the game shine, and
that's interesting. I guess I had first come in contact with it as Intrigue at one of the Unpub minis, probably Taking Town at Seventh Dimension. I think it was the first time I recognized it. So I'm sorry if it appeared elsewhere and I didn't know. I remember it being there. And I remember not getting to play it that day because there was so much else going on. But I always wanted to because I've liked your stuff for a while, and so I didn't know that you had doctored up to make it look like AEG for the Tempest thing. That's interesting to know. And then Josh, you'd come in contact with the game just through playtesting with Jay, or
sure. So me and Jay are regular gaming partners, whatever the term is, not partners. Gaming buddies. That's probably a better term. And so we're both a part of a regular group here in Philadelphia, and so that's where I had first played the game. Then at the last Unpub, I think it was Unpub 4, if my count is right. At the last Unpub, I wound up playing it with a couple of my other friends from around here. That have been in the industry for quite a while, and when we were driving back, we were actually talking about it. It was called Intrigue at the time, as one of our favorite games that we thought was most ready for production at that point. And then a few months later, I think it was probably March or April. So Unpub was in January. So 3 or 4 months later, I reached out to Jay and I was like, hey, so whatever happened with Intrigue? And he was like, well, nothing happened with Intrigue. It's just kind of sitting there. And so that's when I reached out to him and said, well, what if we developed an app for it? Would that be something you were even interested in? So that's how that started.
Now, you had previously, Josh, done an app for Mars Needs Mechanics.
I have, yeah. It's still on the App Store. And, okay. Yeah, so Mars Needs Mechanics, I'm friends with the Nevermore Games guys, and so through that friendship and everything, I got their permission to go ahead and release an unofficial version of Mars Needs Mechanics. It's not endorsed by them in any way. It's simply that they allowed me to use their game and design, their artwork, that was all okay with them. But ultimately, if the app is terrible and you don't like it, that's my fault. That's not theirs. But they are aware of it. Ben Rossett, the designer of it, he's aware that it's out. We have an agreement in place, and he's cool with it being on the market. Ultimately, we're hoping that more people play that one also, so that they're just aware of the game, and it's an easy way for them to check out the physical game and whether they'd like it or not.
So having had that one under your belt, you decided to take on Intrigue, which is now Cahoots.
Yep.
And even though there is no physical game on the market yet.
Yeah, that was something interesting. So through my reviewing and such, I've been able to meet a few people through that, through Unpub, through just different conventions that I've gone to, and I also thought that Cahoots, Intrigue at the time, was a good enough game that it really deserved a better audience, a bigger audience. And I thought that if we made an app for it and people were able to try it out for inexpensively, it's $1.99 on the App Store, that if they were able to try it out, they would really enjoy it and want a physical version. And so I ultimately thought that having it as an app would make it easier for it to be able to find a publisher.
Cool. Jay, do you have anything more to add? Are you happy? Obviously, you worked on the graphic design, and now that the app is out there, are you happy with it? And do you think that it adequately implements your game? I know it's
I am happy with it. I think that Josh did a really great job, not just in implementing the app itself, but in working with me to really present the game in the best possible way on the Apple Store. He's also been great with promoting it and talking to people about the game, and we've gotten some really good reviews. We've gotten people that say, this is one of the apps that they're really happy with on their phone, as well as people saying this is one of one person said my favorite trick-taking card game, and people are saying things that kind of lead toward I wish there were a physical copy of this game,
which
is really encouraging. So it's doing exactly what we wanted it to.
All right, guys. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to do this and for making a game that I actually enjoy. So kudos.
Yeah, thanks, John.